Hi everyone, welcome back to another video lesson. We're looking at topics 1.7 and 1.8 as we still look at data and looking at graphs. We're looking at how we can create, draw, and interpret scatter plots. But we first of all need to know what a scatter plot is. So a scatter plot is a graph that shows the relationship between two sets of numeric data. So how does one affect the other? The points in a scatter plot will often show a pattern or a trend. And sometimes we might say this is a positive pattern or a negative pattern and how they affect each other. We'll look more at that later on. From the pattern or the trend, we can determine if a relationship actually exists, and then we can use the graph to describe the relationship. So a scatter plot is a graph that shows the relationship between two sets of data, two sets of numeric data. The points in a scatter plot often show a pattern or a trend. And from this pattern or trend, we can see if a relationship actually exists, and then we can describe the relationship. Not just scribble, sorry, typo on my part, but describe the relationship. So what do we need for a scatter plot? Well, first, we collect the data. And then we're going to organize it as ordered pairs. And we'll see that in the example that we do in a few minutes. After that, we want to present the data points on a graph, that's labeled. And we'll look at that later on too as we go through the example with the ordered pairs and also with the points on the graph. We can then use a scatter plot to analyze the data pattern. So we can analyze the data for a pattern and see if a pattern actually exists or not. And then we can describe the pattern. If one exists. Sometimes we look at the data and look at the scatter plots, and we'll see that they are so scattered that there's no way for these patterns, for a pattern to exist, because they're just so scattered. So now we need to look at some of the things we need to do with a scatter plot. So we're in our example to create a scatter plot. This chart below shows the number of days absent for each student and their mark in a math class. Some keys to putting a scale on a graph. We need to make sure that we have information that's going to work and a scale that's going to work for us. So scale always starts at 0. And the scale must go up in equal increments. We talked about that in class today, actually. We talked about the graph with the Chevy truck, the GM truck, and the Dodge truck, and how we wanted to start it at 95, or how we wanted to start it at 0, or how we wanted to start it at 0 and then do the little squiggly line to break it and start at 50. We must have equal increments. One little thing here, the x-axis may have a different scale than the y-axis. The other thing is we want to use the whole graph. We've got this whole graph down here that we want to use. We want to use the whole thing. We don't want to just kind of use a little piece up here. We want to try to use the whole graph. So let me erase that part. And the increments go on the lines, not on the space between the lines. So here we have our graph, or our data rather. Here's our ordered pairs. The number of days absent and the mark, or the percent that the student has in the math class. We got to give this a graph. So days absent and math mark. That can be the title of my graph. The next thing I do is I need to pick a scale. I need to find what's going to be a good scale. I need to determine what's going to go on the bottom, what's going to go on the top. On this one, I want the days absent on the bottom. And I want to try to pick a scale. I look at this list here, and I see that my biggest number is 20. I'm going to kind of look at my graph here. I can go 0, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, and 20 here at the end. I need to now pick a scale for my y-axis. And I can look at it and I see that I've got a whole range of marks on this side here. So in that range of marks, I need to start at 0. So again, I'm going to start at 0. And I think I can go up by 10s fairly safely. So 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100. And I'm going to put math mark, and it is in percent. So now I want to plot these. I'm going to use a red marker for this one. I want to take the 12 that I have here and the 65 that I have here, and I want to put it on my graph. So my days absent, I'm going to go over to the 12, and I'm going to go. Just pardon the interruption for the announcements. I'm going to go over 12 to the days absent, and I'm going to go up to where the 65 is. That's right between our 60 and our 70. So that's my first mark. My next mark is 4. They've been away for 4 days, and this person has a 78. So I'm going to try to guess that that's going to be right around here. I'm going to go over with a 6. So they've been away 0 days, and they have a 67. So I'm going to say that's right about there. And I'm going to keep doing this. I'm going to go 10 and 52. Which is right about there. I've got 15 and I've got 43. So 15 falls between my 16 and my 14. 43 is going to be right about there. I have a 20 and a 36. I'm missing the line right there, but they've got a 20, a 36 is going to put me right about there. 8 and 58. Over to my 8. Try to find out where the 58 is. A 1 and an 85 is going to be right about here. A 3 and a 92 is right about there. An 8 and a 74 is going to be right about there. A 9 and a 62. And all I'm doing is I'm plotting these spots. I've got a 7 and a 64. And that's going to be right about there. I have an 11 and a 57. That's probably going to be right about there. I have a 10 and a 70. That's right there. That one was easy. I have a 6 and a 61. That's going to be right about there. And there we have it. There's our scatter plot. We can try to look for any relationship between the mark that they have and the days absent. We might be able to determine that there's a relationship. We'll talk more about that in class. We can kind of see a trend. We can kind of see how it seems the more days you're away, the lower your mark is going. We'll talk about that in class when we get back. We'll do a bunch of practice questions, and we'll see how those go. Remember, if at any time you need to go back and check this out, feel free to pause it, rewind it, go over some things. I did the graph fairly quick, but you have the privilege of being able to stop it and rewind it. I'll talk to you guys in class.